There are some points of real disagreement. There are some points of possible agreement. I'll deal with the possible ones swiftly. They go like this. The first is that there is future potential for extreme lifespan extension. The second is that multiple different aging mechanisms may need to be targeted. And the third is something that Aubrey calls longevity escape velocity and whether it could occur. Let's deal with the first one. The theme that will come through the next 20 minutes is to keep an open mind. Do not mistake agnosticism for enthusiasm. Do I think there is potential for extreme lifespan extension in the future? All kind of depends on how far in the future you want to go, doesn't it? This, of course, is a cave painting from Lascaux. It's 20,000 years old, and you just know at the end of it, somebody turned around and said, no one will ever travel faster than a galloping horse. Okay? And if they had said that, and I'm sure they did, people being people, they were foolish. They would have been a damn sight more foolish if they'd tried to pick when in the next 20,000 years this was going to happen. Because for 19,900 years, they would have been right. People did not travel faster than horses. So to turn around and say, do I think there could be extreme life extension? If I turn around and say no, that means that I am forecasting 1 million years, 500,000 years, whatever. Okay, yeah, sometime in the future. I don't live 1 million years in the future. I live now, and now it ain't happening. Okay, next thing, multiple different aging mechanisms may need to be targeted. There isn't that much difference. We know that there is not one single aging mechanism. We know that there is not 100 of them. If you go back 20 or 30 years, we had a model where we expected a large number of genes to have small effects. It now looks as if we have a small number of pathways with big effects. Science is a progress report, nothing more. That could change. And thus, the key feature of a scientist is to keep an open mind, but not such an open mind that your brain drops out through the hole, which brings me to longevity escape velocity. This is defined as rejuvenation therapies that you apply, so you've got some kind of headroom to develop a new therapy, which you then apply, which gives you some more time, etc., etc., etc. Sounds great on paper. It's perhaps not unreasonable, but it has two essential inbuilt assumptions. One is linear progress in technological advancement. The other one is linear progress in technological deployment. And guess what? Across the broad sweep of human history, sometimes this happens and sometimes it doesn't. Okay. The past in this regard is no guide to the future. There's the first plane, about 30 miles an hour. Fast forward 40 years, look at that incredible progress, 20 times faster and ranges you can't really compare. Fast forward another 30 years, the speed's stuck. Fast forward a little bit longer, it's dropped. These are marginal improvements. Okay, and there are lots of technologies where you can see things like this happen. A big initial gain and then a plateau. There are ones that stay big and keep on going. Okay, the problem is for longevity escape velocity to work, you've got to bet it's one of the ones that stays going all the time. The other thing, since the past is no guide to the future, is that visions of the future are no guide to the future either. This is me. I am 5. I like dinosaurs, nature films, and science fiction. And this in the top picture is what I believe my life will be. Okay? I will be on a moon base with a woman wearing uncomfortable clothing. This is where my life ended up. I dress in pseudo-medieval clothing with a man who's trying to shed weight because he's about to go on Strictly Come Dancing. Sic transit gloria mundi. Okay, and I am not the only person who gets the future radically wrong. All right? This is great. I have a hobby. I'm slightly ashamed of it, but I'll admit it in front of you in the video camera. I collect old visions of the future. You know those cities of Bry Nylon and Teflon on the moon we should be living in, but aren't. Okay. One of my favourite ones, 1968. I hope everyone concerned for the future of human society will read this book. Okay, it gives a handy table of timescales, a bit like Aubrey. It gives a handy timescale of development. By 1975, we will have a drug which erases memories. We already do, it's called alcohol. Okay, we will have artificial viruses. By 2000, we will have personality reconstruction. I think we can all think of some people whose personalities need reconstructing. Okay, we will also have, what else? Yes, man-animal chimeras. If you see one shambling down Broad Street, do try and steer him to the nearest college. Okay, what else have we got? Oh yes, after 2000, control of aging and the extension of lifespan. The debate itself is superfluous. It's already here, along with disembodied brains. They're probably at the back saying, you know, can you see anything? I can't see a thing. Okay. Brain-computer links, that's Xbox, presumably. Oh, and the indefinite postponement of death. You should be living in the period where you can spend a year dead for tax reasons. Okay. There is no difference between this book and this one. Okay, except this one tries to sell copies by frightening people with false fears. This one tries to sell copies by encouraging people with false hopes. Which brings me, with the appropriate rhetorical tirade, to the points of disagreement, which Aubrey has not done a bad job of setting out, actually. That resistance to funding aging research results from biogerontologists adopting the stance that aging is not a disease. That SENS is That SENS is a practical program for extending human lifespan, as my old Jewish supervisor would have said, from your mouth to God's ears. Okay? And that gerontologists are arguing there will be big increases in human lifespan from things like rapamycin, when in fact they'll just be small ones. Right, let's do this. Okay. Always good to read what people write rather than what they say when they're standing next to you, because when they write, they forget you're around, so the safety catch is off. I must engage in the unpleasant business, wrote Aubrey, of exposing a serious distortion of the facts that's been perpetrated by a large number of senior researchers. Through the 50s to 70s, rhetoric developed to the effect that the infirmities of aging should be viewed as two distinct phenomena, age-related disease and aging itself. The motivation was pragmatic. Gerontologists hope to ring-fence their area of work, intellectually and financially. There are three substantive, and I believe false, points in this. The first one is that aging and age-related disease were conceptualized as distinct only from the mid-20th century. That those researchers sought to distort the facts, that they told lies, that they knew that aging and age-related disease were one and the same, but said they were distinct, and that they said they were distinct for personal gain. Let's knock them down. Aging and age-related disease were viewed as distinct only from the mid-20th century. No. Aging and age-related disease have been seen as distinct for 2,000 years. The first person to actually draw the distinction is Galen in the 2nd century. His influence on medical curricula lasted until the 19th. The last paper citing him I read last month. Okay? Koronchevsky, professor of gerontology at Oxford, the founder of our society, directly echoed Galen and distinguished between physiological and pathological aging. He did not invent this distinction. You all had it. Everybody had it. Gerontologists, non-gerontologists, Uncle Tom Cobley. Second point, that researchers distorted the facts. This is really serious, as far as I'm concerned. Saying that these people, and by implication, us, knew that aging and age-related disease were identical, but said they weren't, is steering really close to accusing these people of scientific fraud. You know one thing, you tell the public another. And it's wrong, okay? It is wrong because to distort the facts would require that the scientists in question knew that aging is, in Aubrey's words, no more and no less than the collective early stages of age-related disease. They did not know this. Why did they not know this? the single gene mutants which show delayed aging, going back to the common ground we covered, are the strongest evidence for hypothesizing that a few mechanisms drive both aging and age-related disease. These were not identified until the 1980s. How can a man in 1961 be distorting the facts when the facts rely on discoveries that won't be made for 25 years? Okay? It just does not stack up. And wait, I know what you're probably thinking. Well, we all now know that aging and age-related disease are one and the same, don't we? And the simple answer is, no, we don't. Okay? And it comes down to a complicated problem of definition. Everybody worries about defining what aging is. And the elephant in the room is that no one defines what disease is. Disease is defined as abnormal function. Aging happens to everyone. How can it be abnormal if it happens to everyone? That, I think, is also Galen's starting point, because it don't take much to know it. If disease is abnormal function and aging is universal, aging is not a disease. You could turn around and say, well, okay, experimental evidence shows X, Y, and Z, but redefining aging, as Aubrey seeks to do, as no more and no less than the collective early stages of age-related disease, doesn't help you either, because it ignores canonical aging changes. Every year, you lay down a dentine ring in your teeth. We date skeletons like this. This carries no illness or sickness. So a definition of aging as disease excludes changes that we all know are aging. And what this actually says is not, we can go on till the cows come home about what's aging and what's disease. It shows that we are dealing with what Immanuel Kant described as a categorization problem. Okay? Aging and disease are the categories which we create on late life physiology. We are drawing a line, like a speed limit, on a continuum of physiology. And what is interesting is the great early gerontologists recognize this. They describe aging as the sum of changes. It's an essence, they don't even use the word. The sum of changes happening in later life. Because this is so confused, there is plenty of room for honest differences of opinion, not only among scientists, but among different members of the public on what the relationship between these two categories is. My view is they should probably be removed from the discussion altogether, and we should concentrate only on those things which compromise quality of life and those things which don't. Okay. And the last point, I'm afraid I regard as a punch below the belt, and I'm not sufficiently sporting to not return one. Okay? That the gerontologists of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s turned around and said that aging was distinct because they thought they'd get more money. Why did they lie? Somebody who was ignorant of the cultural matrix would assume that they were lying if they were themselves someone who felt that everybody was able to make serious distortions of the facts when it suited them. This is Aubrey's public statement. It's certainly true that when I was unknown, my institutional affiliation at Cambridge was an advantage, and I didn't take too much trouble to stop it from being so. But that's just riding your luck, and I would like to know who doesn't do that. I don't do that. I don't claim to be a professor of an institution that I'm not. Okay? And so in that sense, if you think serious distortions of the facts are acceptable, it's only logical that you would assume that other people would do the same thing. Next point, SENS. Another quote. SENS is my plan for defeating aging. I've worked hard to generate evidence as to whether it's sense or nonsense. Again, these are all Aubrey's words. Go read them. In 2006, I received this decisively through the SENS challenge. There were entries unanimously, emphatically judged to fall decisively short of a demonstration that SENS isn't worth trying. My critics made the claim that SENS is so implausible, no one should try it. What awful, closed-minded people we were. Okay? And this is an interesting mixture of the brazen and the sly that requires careful analysis of the evidence. This is the SENS challenge. Okay? Purpose to establish whether Aubrey's scheme is worthy of consideration. Submissions are sought to attempt to demonstrate that it's not. What happens next is subject to 3 different accounts. Aubrey's account, Tech Review's account, and what the judges said. I'll concentrate on what the judges said, which is SENS has many unsupported claims and is certainly not scientifically proven. The entrants have not demonstrated that the idea is unworthy of discussion, compared to what? People seriously discuss UFOs, life after death, and reincarnation. Okay? But the proponents have not made a compelling case for it. I stick with that. The proponents of this approach have not made a compelling case. We then move to slight turns of phrase. My critics made the claim that SENS is so implausible there's no need to even try and implement it. And that's been knocked down too. This is equating worthy of consideration and technically feasible. And the two, at least in my book, are not synonyms. You know, Kip Thorne's work on wormholes does allow you to discuss the possibility that they may allow time travel. That is a long way from being synonymous with, I have a great idea for a time machine, let's go visit the Cretaceous period. Okay, a better question, and one that those of us who are used to trying to interface between science funding and lab-based stuff will understand, is this. Do you do SENS or a fundamental aging research program? I speak as somebody who did a PhD at the bench, which Aubrey did not. I speak as somebody who runs a research group, which Aubrey has not done. And I speak as somebody who was responsible for co-directing 35 projects in the UK in an aging research program that I ultimately had to report to government. I don't know who Aubrey reports to, God alone, I suspect. Okay, the real problem goes like this. SENS and aging research programs both make recommendations for avenues of research. Which one is best? SENS is closed. You know, it's not good to say, you know, and my views haven't changed since 1982. Okay? It assumes that the primary causes of aging are known, and that the job now is just to fill in the gaps by something halfway between scientific research and acts of worship, okay, between where we are and where we need to be. Aging research programs and scientific programs in general are open. They treat our knowledge of the biology as provisional and incomplete, because that's what science is. And it is the better and more practical option. And I'll show you why you shouldn't treat questions as closed. This is a very Aubrey-esque piece of text from a favourite author of mine, Adrian Berry. Human lifespans will be increased from the present average of 78 to as much as 140. This will be done by the use of superoxide enzymes, he wrote in 1995. And he's drawing on the scientific literature, like Aubrey does. The free radical theory of aging, postulated first by Harman, blah, blah, blah. Okay, among the many theories advanced today, it shows promise of application. Evidence has been accumulating in favour of the free radical theory of aging, wrote one Aubrey de Grey. Okay, fast forward a few years, and our data call into serious question the hypothesis that this is a good theory. Okay, new challenges to the oxidative damage theory seem set to bring the vultures down to peck at its bones. And this paper comes at the end of a long set of theories which showed that treating the question as closed was wrong. Okay? SENS assumes it already has the answers. I do not think that that is the case. Okay? For me to prove Aubrey wrong about SENS, I only have to be lucky once. For Aubrey to prove me wrong about SENS, Aubrey has to be lucky all the time. All of his predictions have to be right. Last one, prospects. Mainstream gerontologists, says Aubrey, are arguing there'll be big increases in human lifespan from things like rapamycin, when in fact there'll only be small ones. This is a tendency, as far as I can see, to conflate proof of concept with viable treatment and written statement with off-the-cuff hope. This is what Brian actually wrote. Okay? Is this the first step towards an anti-aging drug? Healthy individuals should not consider taking rapamycin. It is at least amusing if you go into the British National Formulary and look up rapamycin, where you can see that a putative anti-aging drug is contraindicated for old people. Okay? It does suggest there's a long way to go here. What Brian does say is it's interesting to consider that rapamycin might prove useful. And that is where we end. I will leave you with my thoughts.